Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sean Sweeney. I am the Director of Education and Special Programs at the Center for Nonprofit Advancement. We are very excited to have wrapped up our 2021 Excel Award process, Excel standing for Excellence in Chief Executive Leadership Award process. This year, we have 3 incredible finalists, 1 winner, 2 honorable mentions, so you'll meet in a second. But the point of these videos that we'll be releasing is to kind of just talk about best practices we learned from our finalists. You know, they have some awesome insight that is shareable to people in our sector. So we're hoping to get some great info out of them today and in our other 2 videos. There will be 3 videos. This one is building coalition. The other 2 will be empowering staff and working with your board. No need to watch them in any order, but there will be 3, so make sure you keep an eye out for all of them. So for now, I would actually like to go ahead and introduce our sponsor. Ian Schumann works with GRF CPAs and Advisors, who has been sponsoring the award for some time, and I will pass things over to him. Go ahead, Ian.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I am really happy to be here today. I'm Ian Schumann, a partner in outsourced accounting at GRF CPAs and Advisors. GRF is actually one of the top 200 firms in the country, but importantly, we are also an independent firm, locally owned, and really part of the DC area nonprofit community. As part of that, we feel that our values should reflect the values of that community. And one of the ways we do that is by our continuing sponsorship of this award. So I have 2 jobs today. First is to issue a thanks to everybody involved in the process, the staff at the center, all of the applicants, and of course, all of my fellow members of the selection committee. My exciting job today is to introduce our 3 finalists. The winner, Kube Ngaje from DASH, the District Alliance for Safe Housing, and our 2 honorable mentions, Mark Chalfant from Washington Improv Theater, WIT, and Lisa Wetzel from Bright Paths. So I am really excited to have the 3 of you together today in this space. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Ian. And yeah, it's interesting because in years past, our finalists in each of these awards really excel in kind of different ways, and they're from such different organizations, which is still true today. But the nice fun thing is that all 3 of our finalists actually kind of excelled in very similar areas. So we're excited to have all 3 of our finalists for all 3 of our videos this year. So I'm just going to go ahead and kick things off. The question, and normally I would tell people, you know, look up the organizations kind of offline so we don't waste any time in the video, but I think it's actually important for this first video about building coalition. I'm wondering if each of you can just explain the mission of your organization and where there is space for partnerships in your programming. Kube, if you want to go ahead and start.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Ian. Kube Ngaje here, President and CEO of DASH, District Alliance for Safe Housing. And DASH is the largest safe housing provider for survivors of domestic and sexual violence in the DC metropolitan region. We provide a continuum of emergency to transitional to permanent housing options and holistic supports for survivors of domestic and sexual violence. And there is always an incredible space for partnerships. The DASH's name is District Alliance for Safe Housing. And so we always underscore that alliance, that we do this in partnership and in community with so many community providers in the direct service field, in the for-profit sector, and also in wonderful partnerships with folks who may not necessarily seem like an initial fit. So we partner a lot with, banks who provide economic empowerment supports for survivors in our programs. We partner with landlords. We do a lot of technical assistance and training throughout the region on how to best support survivors. And we also partner with individuals who reach out to us on a one-on-one basis to provide tutoring services, to come in and host a Christmas party for children to bring a smile on their face. And so we always welcome partnerships like what we've talked about so far. And I'm really excited to hear from Mark and from Lisa about what they do, because just the arts field and also what Lisa and her team do could present even more opportunities for partnerships down the line.
Great, thanks so much, Kube. Just moving along, let's go to Lisa next.
Well, hi. So I'm Lisa Wetzel, the Executive Director of Bright Paths, and we're a nonprofit based in Fairfax, but we serve all of Northern Virginia and a little bit beyond. We provide basic needs assistance for low wealth individuals and families. And then we also provide programs that build resilience, and those include financial literacy and workforce development. We also have programs that provide supports for children, holiday assistance, back to school assistance, and then weekend food packs for students. And those help to offset costs that are very, very stressful for parents. But, you know, the partnerships is really important to our work. We try to look at clients holistically, and we realize that we can't meet all their needs alone. And so we're constantly looking for additional services like county services and or other nonprofits that provide services that complement what we're trying to provide for our clients. And we're going to be going into some technical questions, I think, in just a minute, but workforce development and financial literacy are areas where different corporations can get involved either through volunteering as individuals or volunteering as groups, and they can teach classes, they can mentor, and they can bring their expertise to help our clients actually help themselves. And that's what we're really looking for.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. And Mark, over to you.
Sure. So I'm at Washington Improv Theater, and our mission is basically to unleash the creative spirit of play throughout the DMV. And that we do that through performances, through a classes program, and through workplace training. And I think when it comes to partners, there are a couple different ways we think about it. On the artistic side, we're frequently partnering with other artists. So we have programming that pairs improv with puppetry, dance, beat poetry, percussion, all kinds of other art forms that can sort of pair with improv, including scripted theater. But then the real partnerships that I think are fascinating happen on the people side of things, because you know, the opportunity and challenge of our mission is that we believe everyone in the DMV can get something from improv. And so that means like we really have to keep our eyes open, because anybody could be a potential partner. So that means charter schools in our geographic community. That means senior enrichment programs. That can mean a program that's helping women experiencing homelessness. For us, it really becomes about that relationship. Who's the person that we can talk to, who is adventurous enough to give this a try, you know, and be open to the possibility that maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Maybe we'll have to sort of, you know, rebuild it as we go. Maybe it'll be perfect from the get-go. It's really different with each group of people we work with.
Got it. Great. Thank you to all three of you for that. So let's get into like the real meat of it. So when you're potentially going to start a new partnership with an organization, a company, an individual, how do you actually start the process, and what do you look for in potential partners? Kube, let's start with you again.
Oh gosh, how do we start that process? For us, I always go back to the concept of partnership really being tied to relationship. A lot of what we do is based on human connection. And so we have a saying at Dash, we meet people where they are. And I think that's true for every type of partnership that you may be seeking to form. We always start that process with looking for alignment in vision and alignment in how we deliver services. We sit at the intersection of domestic violence and homelessness. And many people think, you know, when they hear about DASH, they're like, oh, you're a housing organization, which we are, but survivors require a very nuanced approach because we're the simplest way of describing our work is we are trauma. We're trauma dismantlers. We're there to help dismantle decades of trauma and also sometimes systemic issues. And when we are seeking partnership, we look for, first and foremost, creating a relationship with the individual, with the organization, and making sure that we have synergy in how we approach our work. Sometimes it starts with conversations, and we have a model of involving several voices throughout the organization and what we call a spirit, a culture of collective care, really empowering our staff, empowering people to own their voice and to own their power. And so, I'll give an example of a partnership that we recently formed with Zedek DC that provides services for low-income DC residents to help them gain access to economic empowerment and debt reduction. And that was through a relationship that we had created. I was introduced to the CEO of Zedek DC, and we just started a conversation about, well, what do you do? And then invited his team to sit at the table and really think through how can we advance the joint needs of our population. His organization sees primarily over 90% of his clientele of people of color, which really mimics the population that Dash serves. And so through those conversations over a couple of months, we were finally able to create a memorandum of understanding and to be able to support the joint missions of the survivors in our mutual care. And that means that now when one of my team members is looking to, has a survivor who is being harassed by creditors and debt collectors, they can pick up the phone and they have a relationship on the other line to just say, hey, I want to bounce ideas off of you, or, is there a resource that you have that we can tap into for survivors, and vice versa. When they have a survivor who's seeking housing resources or some of the holistic advocacy services that Dash provides, being able to just pick up the phone or send an email and know that someone on the Dash team will be there to support them.
Great, thank you. Lisa, what about you and your team at Bright Paths?
Well, similarly with how Kube was describing it, it's, those relationships are just so important, and in making sure that we have the client's interest at heart. That's our main goal. When we look at partnership, we want to be able to establish some parameters. So we enter into a memorandum of understanding with almost every single one of our partners. And we find that this is a really a powerful way to manage the relationship. And, we are able to have clear expectations of who's going to do what and who's going to report on what. We've got clear expectations of what is considered success and how we're going to measure that. And then, and so we also revisit those MOUs every year to make sure that we're on the same track, and that if there needs to be anything that needs to be changed, we can do that. The one thing I'll say about the MOU, it's not legally binding. So we have a way out if it's not working. And one of the struggles that we have with it is that when there's staff turnover, you have to have that champion within that other entity that will really help to keep things on track. I mean, it starts with the executive director or CEO of the company who signs the MOU, but it's the program managers that actually deliver. And so sometimes there's challenges with those if there's staff turnover, and we have to revisit it again. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Lisa. And Mark, what about you and your team at Washington Improv Theater?
Well, I think so much of what Kube and Lisa said resonated for me. Definitely making sure that our values are aligned with the values of the partner that we're working with, and having those expectations clear, including like if we need an escape hatch, or if we need to define like, oh, there's going to be a trial period and we're going to evaluate this 4 weeks in or 8 weeks in to see how it's going, so that we're not stuck in something that isn't really working. I think the other thing that for us, one of the questions was, how do you start the process? And I think for us, it's having everyone in our immediate community, and that's our performers and our teachers and our board, having them understand that like these kinds of partnerships are things that we are actively interested in. So if they are connected to an organization, or they think of a group of people in DC who they think might really respond in an interesting way to improv or get something from it, like talk to us. Let's find our connection and see what we can make happen.
Great, thank you. And it's so interesting because you've all pretty much already mentioned this, and it was going to be my next question anyway. So let's just go right into it. Was, what about all the technical stuff about an actual partnership? Kube and Lisa, you mentioned MOUs. Can you maybe walk us through like what actually goes into your MOUs and what other things come up in like on the technical side of partnerships, like revenue sharing, branding for programming, things like that? Kube, do you want to kick off again?
Yeah, happy to. So on the technical aspect, I'm actually going to pivot a little bit and talk about partnerships more on the contractual side that we enter into with our funders, right? Because that's also one of the biggest partnerships that we ever enter into as an organization, and the same applies for MOUs. We look at our deliverables as an organization. We talk through with the partner of what they're looking for, what they're looking to accomplish, and then we memorialize that with the funder in a grant agreement or with a community partner through an MOU process. We also, for the last couple of years, have been looking through at our internal processes. So, for some of the partnerships that end in an MOU, sometimes it's necessary. What we have found in MOUs is that a lot of nonprofits enter into them and they cost a lot of time and effort with your team and with the other person's team. And so we have started to commit to ensuring that most of our MOUs, to the extent to which it's possible, come with a cost share partnership so that we can say, okay, we are going to be committing X amount of dollars to this partnership, and they're delivering the services to us. Or if we are the organization that is providing that service to a community partner, this is there a cost share fee that Dash would need. In other cases, there's no there are no costs exchanged. It's really just we're doing this in partnership, and we are going to commit to doing a quarterly partner check. We're going to commit to doing, here are the metrics that we will each share so that when it comes time for a grant application on this project and we want it to be funded by another partner, we have the necessary data to be able to show success. And we also define success. I think an outcome of COVID has been flexibility that we have seen on the private sector, that we are now really looking to help build into the public sector with the funding that we receive from our federal and local government grants. And another technical aspect of that is, to Lisa's point, the legally binding pieces. So there is a very thorough review process of all of our contracts to make sure that every single part of the organization that has a part to play. So our finance knows what's deliverable for them, our programmatic team knows what's deliverable for them, our data and impact team knows what's deliverable, and then we check against those as we go along. And the last thing I will add for technical aspects is what we have started to call trauma-informed funding. When we do coalition building, wanting to make sure that when we sit at the table with our partners, that does have a dollar figure attached to it, that it really aligns with the trauma-informed practices that the organization has, because the back-end operations of partnerships that come with a legally binding contract can be very time consuming. And we want to make sure that we're not doing things just to do things, but that they're actually meeting the intents of the goals and not creating double work. And something else before I jump off around partnerships, a lot of times nonprofits who are led by people of color are not paid for their work, right, in mutually beneficial way. And so Dash has become very vocal in making sure that when we are partnering with a lot of organizations that are people of color led, or that are smaller organizations, that we advocate to make sure that we are contributing financially to that partnership, and vice versa. So I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Okay. So it's interesting. I mean, we have, when we're talking about MOUs, It's only recently that we have tried to build in some cost sharing. But for years, what we were doing was offering our services for free. And so with financial literacy, one of the challenges trying to get clients to actually enroll in the classes, and it's just not one of those attractive programs that people really seek out. And so we were trying to find ways to reach clients, because once clients get involved with it, then they really see the value of it, and there's word of mouth, and that's all great. So when we're talking about partnerships, oftentimes with the nonprofits, we will have our trained volunteers go into other nonprofit space and deliver those services to those clients of that nonprofit. And so our MOU looks like we're asking the nonprofit partner to make sure that they have the intake form filled out for each one of the clients in order for us to meet our grant requirements for demographic reporting. And then we have, a whole section on, if who's going to provide snacks, or, those kind of details. And then who's going to report out on the data, and how much data are we going to share with one another. And then that measurement tool, we have a survey that we will do 30 days, 60 days, 90 days later, and we commit to providing the data for that. And that helps the other nonprofit as well, showing that partnership making an impact. And so it's building in those kinds of pieces, I think are important, so that both entities know that the partnership has value. There was something else I was going to mention, but maybe I'll come back to it.
Sure. Yeah, dude, we're really just like getting those details ironed out, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Great. Mark, do you have anything to add?
I think what Lisa said about offering services for free, that's definitely where we start with some partners. Again, like, I think because we're offering an artistic experience where, like, our measurable outcomes, we're talking about like joy and connection, and these are sort of ethereal things, it's a little bit of a softer engagement. We can play with people and see how things go without like somebody's housing being on the line. Like, those are big life altering pieces of information that your programs work with. And I think just defining what the expectations are on both sides is something that we keep coming back to. Whenever there's a problem, it's usually because, oh, you know what, they were expecting this and they never told us. Or on the flip side, you know what, we were kind of expecting that they were going to do it this way, and we didn't say so, and they didn't. So shame on us.
Yeah, I think with those partnerships too, it's really important to be transparent about when things are not working well, and to speak up and really try to problem solve about whatever it is. And because I think that, both entities enter into the partnership, they want it to work. And that communication is really important.
Great. And actually that ties in perfectly to our final question for this video, and like you said, everyone wants it to work, but of course, sometimes things happen and they don't work out as people were expecting them to. So what are some potential downfalls that you've seen that other people can try to avoid in partnerships like this? And, what are some reasons where you've maybe seen partnerships sour over time? Kube, if you want to start us off again.
I would say, Mark and Lisa touched on it already. For me and for Dash, we try to be very transparent up front. And, we provide our services at no cost to survivors. And when we're entering into intentional partnerships with organizations, because we work and deal in crisis, like a lot of people who come to us, a lot of the survivors who are coming to us are in high levels of crisis and may stay in that space for a while, we cannot shy away from conflict. And so we have to sit in the unknown. We have to sit knowing that there are things that we will not be able to solve, and the same transfers over to partnerships that we enter into. When Mark said we deal in joy, we deal in empowerment. And sometimes people are like, how do you measure empowerment? Well, you measure it by how people, gain agency, and also, of course, the tangible things like security over a period of time. And so what tends to make partnerships go sour is, I've seen, is when there's when partners, if a partner we're working with is uncomfortable with conflict. And if you're uncomfortable with conflict and you sit on something that doesn't feel right, it just festers and it grows, and then emotions get involved, and we deal in emotion. It's our currency, right? And so we try to avoid that by being upfront about who we are, how we operate as an organization, what our organizational culture is. We always look for culture contributors and not people who just ask, what's your culture? But how are you going to contribute to this culture? And that goes to our partners, because they're an extension of our culture. And when things do sour, which we have had those instances before, sometimes they've soured because of us. Being one of the things I'm most proud of about Dash is that we are very comfortable looking ourselves in the mirror and saying, what don't we do so well? And how do we get better at it? So being able to own up to it and say, hey, you know what, we messed up. And this is an opportunity for us to learn how not to do it this way again, and to take accountability for where we fell short and to make it right, to repair those relationships, and to do so with grace, and to really extend the hand and ask for grace in return. And let's see, what else would I add to that? I think that's it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for that. Lisa, what about you?
Yeah, we just made some great points there. So I guess, one of the things that I'd mentioned before is sometimes when there's staff turnover, you don't get the same buy-in. And so it's just really important, I think, for us that we've seen is to make sure that the top leadership is still on board. And, and sometimes, the direction of the partnering organization, their models have changed. And so it's not as good of a fit as it was. And that's okay. And so we need to recognize that. And, but, again, I think that regular communication about being transparent, about problem solving when things go awry, and being humble, when we do make mistakes, like Kubi was saying, I think that's really important. So I guess those are some of the things that we've experienced.
Great, thank you, Lisa. And Mark, over to you.
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind is the sort of consent to participate in the partnership is a crucial part of what makes the relationship work for us. And we recently had an experience in a school where a cohort of students who had selected to work in improvisation, they had an amazing experience. It was like completely changed the nature of how they were participating in their schoolwork and in the school overall. And someone else at the school sort of observed this, and they made the choice that, oh, this means everyone should do this. And so they sort of shoehorned a lot of other students into doing improv the next session, but those students hadn't chosen it. And it makes a real big difference, when you walk in the room and you're just sort of like, essentially a substitute teacher, like, I'm here, none of you chose to be here with me, and I'm going to force you to do this thing. It's a much more difficult enterprise to get buy-in and really create a spirit of play and collaboration when the students aren't willing participants. So that was a lesson for us in making sure that each and every person that we're going to be including in the activity is there through some channel of choice that they made.
So I guess you have to establish that at the very beginning, right? And it's
Yes.
that clear expectations.
Yeah, and that was an example of what we assumed what was understood, and it wasn't. They sort of thought we could maybe be a plug and play solution wherever they needed us, and it's like, no, it's got to be a two-sided thing.
Sean, as I'm hearing Mark and Lisa talk about it, it just reminds me, Dash we have something we call the Dash model that governs everything that we do. And it's and it's seven values. And, we've got sovereignty, empowerment, accountability, partnership, compassion, integrity. And then at the center of it, so all of these 6 values at the center is a process we call recentering. And Mark, what you're talking about reminds me of recentering. And for us, recentering is the constant push and pull between all of those values, because no one is ever like, when you have accountability, you also have compassion. And so when we're out of alignment with one of those, we have to, so as an organization, when we're working with survivors, when we're working with partners, it's this constant sort of process of recentering ourselves, and we use that to apply it to one-on-one with survivor relationships, one-on-one relationships with staff, externally with partners, and also with our board. So it's just, as you were talking, I was like, oh, sounds like recentering.
Yeah.
I love that.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. That wraps up our first video. And again, no need to watch these in any order, but that was our coalition building video. And we're so happy to have had such great insights from all 3 of our finalists, Kube, Lisa, and Mark. So that is it for this video. We hope you'll log in for the next one. And thank you to Ian as well for being here at the beginning. And we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.